Hey guys, this is a SIG Romeo 5 red dot that I have had for many years. This is the original one that I bought. At some point I used to own 3 of these things, but I sold off 2 of them, and I only kept this original one as just sort of a spare optic to put on review guns or backup guns. This thing's been beat up pretty bad. It's had the optic mount replaced, but it still works perfectly fine. The Romeo 5 was one of the first batch of genuinely good budget red dots that made it really difficult to justify spending extra money on an Aimpoint or an EOTech unless you were absolutely chasing night vision performance. These things typically cost less than 150 bucks brand new, and I assume SIG Sauer sold an absolute shit ton of them. So a lot of them are probably still out there in use. If you were going to buy a new budget micro red dot, I would suggest the Holosun ARO. Compared to the SIG Romeo 5, a lot of the newer red dots have better protected turrets, so in the event of an impact, it's not going to punch the turret down into the body of the optic and destroy it. They also typically come with better mounts. The new ARO comes with a nice cruciform crossbolt style mount in 2 different heights, just a lot better than the old spindly one that the SIG Sauer Romeo 5 and the old Holosun 403B used to come with. There's also a new version of the SIG Romeo 5, the Generation 2. A couple of minor changes available with different mounts, maybe better mounts than the original ones that they came with, but ultimately there's not too much difference in the actual performance of the Romeo 5 Gen 2 to the Romeo 5 Gen 1. So the real question is, when should you replace a Romeo 5 Gen 1? Sure, if you're buying one today, there's no reason to go out of your way to buy a Romeo 5 instead of a Romeo 5 Gen 2 or a Holosun ARO for the same amount of money. Even if you got to pay an extra 20 bucks, I'd say it's worth it to have the newer model. But when does it make sense to replace an old working Romeo 5 or Holosun 403R or 403B? I'm going to say that there are 2 reasons to do it. 1, you break the mount. The cost of a new replacement mount for one of these is not going to run you a whole lot of money, but then again, these optics themselves don't run you a whole lot of money, so at that point you may decide to just go ahead and buy a new optic. If you still got the box, go ahead and rummage around in there for the original low-profile mount, swap that thing on there, and then just use it as a backup dot for whatever platform a low-mount dot actually works on. There's very few of them these days. This one is on a Strike Industries mount, not because I broke my original Romeo 5 mount, but just because I thought this looked cool and I wanted to try it out. Yes, there was a time when I thought Strike Industries stuff looked cool. I was young. The other reason to replace a working Romeo 5 is if you want to use it with a magnifier, or you ante up to night vision and you want something that's going to work a little bit better for passive aiming. The original Romeo 5 has an offset angled emitter down here in the corner, and that tends to not work particularly well with magnifiers. You end up getting kind of a smeared or blurred dot when you put a magnifier behind it, as opposed to a lot of magnifier optimized red dots like the new Gen 2 Romeo 5 that has a 6 o'clock emitter, and for whatever reason that 90-degree emitter position does seem to make for a crisper reticle most of the time when it comes to magnifiers. There are also a lot of new magnifier-optimized red dots that give you different reticle selections if you're into that sort of thing. I personally don't really care for it too much, but it's an option if you want to get a little bit more mileage out of a red dot magnifier combo. And if you really want good passive aiming performance for use with night vision, then you are going to have to spend a little bit more. Even the newer budget micro red dots don't have greatly improved performance for passive aiming. They have similar brightness levels and similar light transmission to these older red dots. You got to spend a little bit more before it starts to really pay dividends, and that puts you into the price bracket of something like a SIG Romeo 4T Pro or a Romeo 8T. Or I guess you could still buy an Aimpoint T2. And of course, if you want the absolute best possible night vision and magnifier compatibility that could ever possibly be achieved using man-made technology, you still got to go with EOTech. Holographics just kind of hard to beat in terms of that glass clarity, lack of distortion, granularity of brightness control, all that stuff. But if you still have a Romeo 5 or Holosun 403 and it's still working, keep using it. Just ride it like you stole it until the wheels fall off. These things were a massive leap forward in terms of price to performance ratio at the time, but years later, things actually haven't improved all that much. This old Romeo 5 has been a faithful part of the collection, and it's also kind of a bit of a fun novelty because it's got that old school battery tray before they implemented that new law about child battery safety. Yeah, check this out. You can just open it with your fingers and have yourself a little snack anytime you want. So shout out to all you guys out there who are still rocking an original SIG Romeo 5, or perhaps even better, a not Holosun 403B. This is a True Glow branded Holosun 403B. Yeah, buddy. There was a period of time when True Glow moved out of making the Gobble Stopper and into making rebadged Holosun clones. Anyway, I haven't dropped this thing yet, so the turrets have not punched themselves into the body yet. So once again, I've got a perfectly functional old red dot. It's probably not on its original battery. It may be on its second battery, but I guarantee you this thing is not on its third battery yet. Man, these things were freaking awesome. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.